Welcome to the first on the second meditation. In the second meditation, Descartes challenges the Aristotelian conception of the mind. And in particular, he challenges the Aristotelian doctrine that the forms or species in the mind resemble the things that they represent out in the world. He also challenges the Aristotelian preference for the senses over reason as the origin of our knowledge. And he challenges the Aristotelian idea that all of our knowledge comes first through induction rather than a kind of analysis of what we already know. I'll come back to each of these three dimensions of difference between Aristotle's conception of the mind and Descartes' in the videos that follow and in class. But in each of these three dimensions, in challenging the Aristotelian conception in this way, we can see Descartes in this meditation continuing his attack on the scholastic Aristotelian metaphysics. But this is also where Descartes begins the positive work of laying down the first principles or starting points for the new metaphysics, the metaphysics that's going to ground the system of knowledge of the new scientific revolution. And in particular, this is where Descartes tries to oust the Aristotelian conception of the self and self-knowledge and establish a new account of the self and self-knowledge. The meditation begins with Descartes in a daze, as though he were caught in a whirlpool after the skeptical arguments of the first meditation, which convinced him to suspend his judgments about everything, about all of his prior beliefs. So in the first meditation, we saw Descartes deploying the methods of the ancient skeptics. The ancient skeptics had the goal of getting their interlocutors to suspend judgment, suspend their beliefs in everything. And by suspending all of their beliefs, suspending all of their judgments, the ancient skeptics thought they could reach a kind of tranquil peace, a kind of enlightened tranquility, where they didn't hold anything to be the case or not the case. And they thought once all of our beliefs were suspended in this way, they'd reach a kind of enlightened peace. And although Descartes in the first meditations uses the same methodology as the ancient skeptics in order to counterbalance prior opinion and get himself to a point where he suspends all of his prior beliefs, the goal in a way is very different, right? I mean, he doesn't end up in a place where he's at peace or he's reached some kind of enlightenment or, I mean, this is not a tranquil state, right? I mean, he's as if caught in a whirlpool. He's in a daze. He's completely disoriented. Everything is topsy-turvy. He can't tell up from bottom, up from down. And so this is not at all a tranquil, happy state. Rather, it's a very uncomfortable state where he's completely disoriented and he wants to get out of it as soon as possible. And so even here, after he suspended all of his beliefs, he holds out hope for being able to reorient himself. He thinks that if he can manage to find one thing, however slight, that is certain and unshakable, then he'll be able to do great things. And this one thing, however slight, that's certain and unshakable, he calls an Archimedean point. So what's an Archimedean point? What's an Archimedean point? Well, he compares, so this Archimedean point is going to be the first brick in his foundation, the first immovable rock from which he's going to begin building the new metaphysics. And an Archimedean point, so Archimedes was an ancient Greek mathematician and physicist, and he discovered that a body on a lever far from the fulcrum could lift a much heavier body close to the fulcrum. To say that if you just one stable, fixed, immovable. So the idea is we've got the Earth on one side, and we've got this lever. That's a little tall. I'm kind of running out of room. Let's try that again. We get this lever. So that's the ground, right? And the idea is, if he were to get one fixed point, one fulcrum, then using this lever, if the lever were long enough, right, then if he were to, say, stand on one side of it, because of how long of this fulcrum, he could move the whole world. He could push the whole world up, right? And so the idea is that this fixed point, this Archimedean point, this certain and unshakable foundation, this first brick in his metaphysics, is going to be the unmovable rock which begins the building of his edifice of science, but it's also going to be the fulcrum that he uses to pry the scholastic Aristotelian metaphysics. So there's sort of a dual, this lever. It's an account of ourselves, our self-knowledge, what Descartes is doing in the meditation. First, he shows that I exist as a thinking thing, or that he exists as a thinking thing, or that you exist as a thinking thing. So the meditator exists as a thinking thing, what I'll sometimes call the cogito, which is the thinker conjugated in the first person in Latin. So that I exist as a thinking thing. So that's the first thing he wants to show, that I exist as a thinking thing. The second thing he's going to be up to is examining what this thing is, right? What am I myself? What is my nature? And then he's going to turn to what extended things are. What is this piece of wax? Looking at the first of these, that's what we'll do in the rest of this video, and then we'll turn to the second one video. Looking at the first of these, we get the considerations in question here in this passage. So he says, but I've convinced myself that there's absolutely nothing in the world, no sky, no earth, no minds, no bodies. Does it now follow that I too do not exist? No. If I convince myself of something, then I certainly existed. So after considering this I must finally conclude that this proposition I is necessarily true whenever it's put forward by me or conceived in my mind. So there's one thing that I perceive distinctly, which has to be true. I am, I exist. Why? Why does he think this? Pause here to think about the question. think about where the meditator now finds herself. We're supposing that a malicious demon, I'm supposing, you're supposing, that a malicious demon created me who wanted to deceive me about everything. And notice, even if there were such a demon, even if my nature were such as to go wrong all the time, it still must be the case that I am and I exist. So the idea is the strongest form of doubt proves I am, I exist. Even under the strongest form of doubt, it has to be true that I am, I exist. Even so that it seemed I am not to me, and the demon made it that way, then the demon must have caused me to have an appearance. And this must be an appearance to me, thus I exist. In this way, if I'm doubting, then I exist, no matter what. For I'm doing at least while I'm doubting. So the idea is, I'm doubting. And because I'm doubting, I also am. Right? I mean, there we go. It's a little bit better. Doubting is just a way of thinking. But if I'm doubting and well, there has to be something that's doing doubt in the exist. Right? So long as I'm doubting, so long as I'm a thing, but doing that thinking, and so I am, I exist. So I am, I exist. It's presupposed by the very activity that I'm engaged in right now. And so whenever I put forward anything that's thinking, it has to be true that I am, I exist. We'll spell this out a little bit further in the videos that follow in answering the question, what is this thing that thinks? What is this thinking thing that exists? But we'll turn to that